the same root. It has the idea to be subtle, to be crafty, to take crafty counsel. It means to deal deceitfully. Adam and Eve suddenly know that they're naked. They suddenly know in this moment of understanding, they know that they have dealt deceitfully with their Creator. You see, the knowledge of good and evil they now have leads our first parents to the shocking discovery that they have dealt deceitfully with their good and benevolent Creator. Now I ask you, would that have not been unthinkable? Would that not have been unthinkable had they understood and recognized and acknowledged that before they ate, before they sinned? But now they're exposed. Now they are naked, having dealt deceitfully with their Creator. The term used here in this passage is also used to signify shame. What is their immediate response when they recognize that they're naked? They want to cover that nakedness, because now the element of shame has entered in. Remember just a handful of verses earlier that Scripture tells us that both Adam and Eve were both naked, the man and his wife, and were not ashamed. What's the difference? The disobedience. You see, their nakedness before each other was not in any way shameful, Carl, before sin entered in. But when sin enters in, then there is that element of shame. And our natural reaction is to cover that nakedness. It's innate. It's primal. We all know the story well. Adam and Eve heard the voice of the Lord walking in the garden in the cool of the day, and what did they do? God calls out and says, "Adam, where are you?" And Adam says, "I heard the sound of you in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked, and I hid myself." Do you see the element of shame that has entered now? In what was pure and perfect and sinless before their rebellion against God, now there is only shame and the desire to hide and to cover themselves. They're naked, they're exposed, and they now know this. They feel a sense of vulnerability. This is very primal. Even today, we still have that sense about us. Our instinct is, if we're exposed, is to cover our nakedness. That's the shame that comes with sin and rebellion against our Creator. This word that is interpreted naked here is also used to signify defenselessness. They saw that they were shameful, and now they see they are defenseless. Remember the story of Joseph and his brothers? He was wickedly sold by his brothers into Egypt. The Lord brought him to the point that he was the agricultural minister of the nation of Egypt. There was a famine. Joseph had prepared the nation. And then Joseph's brothers appear before him seeking grain so that their family does not starve. Remember what Joseph said? And Joseph remembered the dreams that he had dreamed of his brothers, and he said to them, "You are spies, you have come to see the nakedness of the land." How is he using that term there? He said, you've come to spy. Now we understand what he's doing here, but let's just take the statement that he made. You've come to spy out the land to see if you can find weaknesses in our defense, because of the famine, you believe we are defenseless. You've come to see the defenselessness, the nakedness of the land. In this moment, Adam and Eve realize that before the face of God, they are without defense. There's no way they can defend themselves. They're guilty. The shame is overwhelming them, and they realize their defenselessness. This term is also used of lawlessness in Scripture. This is an interesting passage here in 2 Chronicles chapter 28. You remember Ahaz, the wicked king, had led Judah into idolatry. Look at the way the passage states that. For the Lord brought Judah low because of Ahaz, the king of Israel, for he had made Judah naked. Same word. He had made Judah naked and transgressed sore against the Lord. What had Ahaz done? He had led an entire nation into idolatry and sin and rebellion against God. He had led an entire nation who was well informed of who Jehovah God was, who was well informed of what Jehovah God required of them, who was well informed of the fact that there were no gods besides Jehovah. But they throw off that yoke of obedience and they go after other gods. That's lawlessness. That is described in Scripture. When we throw off the yoke of obedience, as Adam and Eve did, when we throw off the yoke of God's obedience, remember Jesus said, my what? Yoke is easy. My burden is light. But when we throw off that yoke, there's only lawlessness and rebellion and sin against our Creator. And it's unrestrained. That's the nakedness that Adam and Eve were experiencing. And then, of course, the term nakedness is used of exposure. When something is exposed and laid bare, made visible for all to see. When a particular sin is completely uncovered and laid bare before the whole world. Look at Exodus chapter 32 and verse 25. This is when Moses had gone up into the mountain to receive the commandments, and the Israelites had built a golden calf, and they were worshiping around that golden calf. Look at what Exodus chapter 32 says. 32:25 says, and when Moses saw that the people had broken loose, for Aaron had let them break loose to the derision of their enemies. In the King James Version, that's translated that the people were naked and that Aaron had made them naked. But the reality is what was happening here, they had broke loose from the commands of God. They had broken loose from the worship of the living God and were now worshiping, very ironically, a golden calf that would have been common in pagan Egypt. They've broken loose from following after the living God. They're naked. Do you begin to get a gist of what it means when it says Adam and Eve saw that they were naked? Everything is exposed. They are without defense. They recognize they have shrugged off the yoke of God. They have broken loose from their relationship with God. They are a ship untethered. They're a ship without harbor on the sea of sin. So having shrugged off the yoke of obedience, Adam and Eve find themselves full of shame. They find themselves defenseless. They find themselves exposed. They find themselves untethered from their Creator.